everybody, welcome to another hair-raising, fun-filled, exciting episode of, I just said fun, but whatever, doubly fun episode of Radiorama, where I show you how to work on radios, television, stereos, and anything else that happens to run on glowing vacuum tubes from the 1930s through the 60s or thereabouts. And today we have a Motorola clock radio. Let's see, what model is the Motorola? Model number 5C16W, and it is a typical all-American five tube set, and it has, you can see, a PC board for the chassis, which means leads that are probably going to come delaminated real easily. It's actually given to us by a store, an antique store that was set up across from us at a show, and they donated this to our cause. So thank you. I think it was Mantiques of Niles, Fremont. Thank you so much. I was told that it was working. I'll take their word for it. It's kind of got this nice brass monkey style plug. Plug it in. See what happens here. Well, the squiggly second hand is in fact moving. You can see there's lots of bugs that got stuck inside. The case is kind of grimy and gross. Got a chunk missing here. That doesn't bother me too much. It's not a nice color. It's kind of like this pukey, sickly looking vanilla color. Let's go ahead and fire it up. I kind of like these push button controls here. Need to be prepared to turn it off in case I hear hum, which would indicate bad filter cap.
She discussed me in her recent lectures.
Sierra, right out of LA.
No balls and 2 strikes.
It's working good. I don't want to leave it on though because it's probably all original. If it's been worked on, usually the only thing that's been replaced will be the filter caps. But we want to take a peek inside. This is undoubtedly going to get a custom paint job because this is just a yucky color. I think it could benefit from a much cooler paint job. I'm thinking maybe aqua blue, something really 50s looking. I think this trim comes off, which will make it a hell of a lot easier to paint. So let's take the case apart and see what's going on under the hood. Okay, so this is the back removed, and it is 100% original. Actually, take that back. There's one tube that's been replaced in here. We got a Sylvania. The rest of them are Motorola's with the same style of font. Looks like it's been somewhere that had a lot of bugs. That's bug shit, little specks of stuff. And it's been somewhere that had a lot of cigarette smoke. All this here is nicotine. I can also tell that getting this apart is going to be difficult. Everything is held in with little friction clips. And this is a kind of plastic that breaks if you look at it. We have the original electrolytic cap here. We have 3 values. 2 40 microfarad caps, 1 30 microfarad cap. The clock movement is I'm trying to remember the name of this company. I think it's a Sessions movement. The way they did theirs is they had a flywheel inside of here that constantly rotated. It's an okay design. It's not my favorite. I think Telecrons are way more simple and robust. There's actually a label up here. West Clocks. Okay. That was another brand. That's a big brand. So I'm going to have to carefully tease all of the guts out of here. What my intentions are is, since the set works, and it is record-breaking heat today, I'm going to take this whole case apart, clean the snot out of it, and then paint it. And then I'll get to the chassis, because I want to have plenty of time for this to dry and bake in the nice warm sun, which I don't, will be an advantage. I need to find some little container for all the screws because in the clips, because I sure as hell will lose them. All right, so the way that you remove these little clips is I get a tiny little sharp flathead screwdriver, and I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but you'll see both ends of the clips have these little corners that bite into the plastic. And what you got to do is you get your screwdriver, and I can't do this one-handed, but you pry up on that gently on one side, and they'll usually pop right off. Be careful, because this plastic is brittle, and if you break it, you're going to have to find a different way to attach things. Alright, I gotta say, you know, whoever invented those friction clips, I'm sure they were real proud of themselves, and they got to save the company a few little pennies versus using screws. But God, I hate those things. They're such a pain to remove. So now I've stripped the cabinet down to its bones. In fact, this escutcheon, it's actually metal. It's kind of nice. It's the plastic lens. We can polish that up later. I really am trying to keep all the hardware very carefully organized and put away so I don't lose it like I always do. But the next thing is that the back and the front of the case are greasy and gross. They need to be cleaned in the sink real good. Tell you what, I've worked on a lot of dirty radios. This one was the dirtiest. I mean, I think it actually might have been someone's kitchen radio, because the entire interior and exterior were just sugar coated in it. And it was sticky. Didn't smell like cigarettes either. So yeah, I think it's kitchen grease. The trim was also equally greasy. Need to do some more polishing on it, but I did clean it up reasonably well. Likewise, I did clean up the device. Is hot. It may soon stop. Fuck. Let me get in front of the phone. My phone says it's about to overheat. Breaking heat records for a week here. Alright. I think I've put that phone enough. Anyway, I'm also cleaning up the knob. Sorry, it seems like the video is starting to jitter. Let's try this again. Anyway, sometimes what I'll do if the knobs are gross, I'll soak them in a little warm water and a little bit of ammonia. That'll really clean them up. Don't recommend doing that with this kind of stuff with printed material on it, because ammonia can strip it off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let all that plastic stuff dry out in the sun, which is baking, and I'm going to pick a color. And I think I've got an idea. I think I'm going to leave the back half of it cream. The front's going to be blue or red or green. I think that split color will look just great. Never had to do that before. I had to put the phone in the refrigerator for a few minutes. I think because it's so hot in my garage and the phone is filming, its processor's heating up, and the ambient temperature around is making it worse. Anyway, there was a crack up here, and I glued that as a structural element, and then I wiped the whole thing down with rubbing alcohol. It's real important to get all that grease off of there if you're going to repaint it. You want the paint to adhere. So now what I'm going to do is take it out and put some cardboard down, and I'm going to spray the front this lovely deep ocean blue green. I think that cream, those are pretty complementary. I think that'll work, and then we'll have the chrome and metal accents with the cream knobs. There'll be a lot of kind of contrast in the cabinet when I'm done. Alright, so we're out here with all the cardboard and spray paint, and I've been shaking this up for about a minute or two. Usually I put these in warm water, but it's so hot I don't need to. They're already warm. And hopefully the paint's going to adhere. The wind is blowing that way, but so that means I probably need to turn it just a little bit so the paint will shoot right into it. Alright, there we go. Same angle as the windmills. And this is a difficult one to paint, so I'm not going to film it because I need to concentrate. But usually I would do is I sweep, whoosh, 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 never stay in one place and never stop in any one place. So here we go, start spraying. Let's see what happens. I've never painted in temperatures this hot, but it just came out like liquid, like water. It's very, very, very even. I'm gonna chance it. I get a feeling this is gonna get really fucking hot, but it'll just probably dry a lot quicker. UV, baby. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk quickly. My phone keeps overheating from being in the garage because it's hot. I'm gonna just recap it. Not much to do. This is an interesting idea that Motorola used. These are basically modules, and the modules have little resistors and ceramic caps and stuff all glued together in that orange goo. If any of those go bad, you're kind of out of luck and you'll have to replicate it. Or find the part that's bad and wire it in somehow. The idea of here was like, oh, you can just buy that whole module instead of having to replace like 10,000 little parts. Guess that doesn't really make any sense. Why would you need to replace all the parts? Never mind what I just said. Alright, so I'm going to replace the 3 values in this electrolytic, and that's going to involve using a machine that has a silly name called a solder sucker. I'm going to pull all these out. I'm not sure if I can actually film it because the phone's going to overheat. But anyway, the way that you identify which symbol is which is these symbols: square, triangle, no mark. Now, unfortunately, that's underneath the can. So what I'm going to do is get a permanent marker and mark the can and one part of the chassis, so I can, when I pull it out, I'll know how it's oriented, so I can see the shapes and identify which is which. Actually, you know what? It doesn't matter. 40, and 30 microfarads. I'm just going to put 3 47 microfarad caps in there. So I don't care what those shapes mean. So let me get my solder sucking device out and we will proceed to remove it. Okay, I was going to do an extended filming of this, but I don't think I can do it at this point because of the heat. But what you want to do is use your soldering iron, and you basically melt the solder and then use this device called a solder sucker. It's like a little vacuum. Press the button, it pulls the solder away, because you want to get all of it away so you can gently pull that can off. Because if you try to yank it out, you're going to either crack the board or damage some of the leads. And this looks like a later Motorola, so maybe they've gotten the leads worked out here. I see some burning up here. That's probably the, is that the output or the rectifier? Yeah, that's the output. So that's the hottest tube, and you can see how it's discolored, that material, this phenolic plastic. So I'll do that, pull the electrolytic, need to mark it first, then, like I said, don't need to mark it, they're all the same values, and replace it. Alright, well, I made a little bit of a goof. I don't know why, but I had a very difficult time removing that electrolytic. I spent probably 30 minutes on it. And when I pulled it out, it took some of the leads with it, so I'm going to have to rebuild these leads. So basically these 3 that make this triangle here, that's the positives. And my negatives are in several places, so I have to make sure and bridge all of the places that electrolytic went through, because these 3 together are essentially putting a bunch of grounds together, so they all need to be connected again. What a pain. Okay, that was not easy. I wound up having to knit these guys back together again. I hope I did it right, because sometimes it's very easy to get discombobulated. So I've got it plugged into my isolation transformer, and I've got my alligator clips on. Hopefully it won't go bang. This is the filament. That's a good sign. Holy cow, I got it right the first time. That never happens. Sorry for all the fan noise. I'm trying to keep cool here. But anyway, I'm using plastic polish to clean up all of these pieces here. I'm using a product I've been using for years called Novus number 2. And I'm going to clean up the metal, the clear plastic lens, and this plastic case. Takes a little time. I use a rag, old t-shirts. They don't make fans like that anymore, do they? Chop your fingers off, but it sure keeps you cooler. Okay, next on my list, clean the clock. So I'm going to take it out here and soak it with a little WD-40. The other thing is that I did let the painted front of the case sit in the sun for 3 or 4 days, because I know it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt to reassemble. So I want to make sure that paint was good and cured, so I wouldn't scratch it too easily, you know, from it being too soft. So let's spray this clock mechanism. And get all those little gears and stuff. Just realized I totally forgot to put it on a pan to collect my WD-40 this time, so it's going to get all over my heater. So that's alright, I'll just wipe it off later. So put that in there and then let it work in a little bit. Maybe twist and turn some of the gears, especially when I get some down in that shaft. Get a paper towel. This is stupid. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take some Zoom spout oiler and oil little gears a little bit, especially get the motor shaft. Sometimes you have to turn these a little bit. Alright, that should turn a lot better. The other thing I did is I cleaned up and lubricated the buttons that were up here. They were not really depressing that well. So I oiled those up. And now they switch on and off a lot better. See, the clock is done. I think it's about time to wipe off the excess and then start doing some reassembly. Alright, first thing I needed to do, and I had to prepare in advance on this one, is I attached my audio input lines and my switch line. What I mean by that, you see those little trace cuts here? That's the top of the volume control, which is the incoming radio signal. So I've just temporarily interrupted that with a wire. It's going to come out with a switch, so I can turn the radio signal on and off. Positive of incoming audio goes to the top of the volume pot, which is where that slash was made for the radio line. The other side is negative, bottom of the pot. So now I can proceed to reinstall the components, and what you have to do in these little friction clips is you whack them with a hammer and flatten them out again so you can press them on and they'll grab. Alright, I realized I made a goof here. I totally forgot to film the audio input sequence. I got carried away. But this is what you do. You have an isolation transformer. One side is 120 volts in, the other side is 6 volts out. And so we have the primary, which is going to the top and bottom of the volume pot, and then we have the secondary where the incoming audio line comes in. One of our guys suggested that 33 ohms is a better pairing for running our right and left channels together. Then the other side is your ground. I've tried to get this away as far as possible from the PC board so it doesn't interfere with, you don't get any sort of like RF pollution on the audio. And I did things a little bit different this time. I put the switch on the side here and the cord comes out the bottom because we've got this foot here, and I think that's better. It keeps the cord shorter, and it's not as much of a problem of having the cord in the back where unless you glue it, it's going to like jiggle around inside of there above the tubes, which is not nuts. I don't love that idea of having a dangling audio cord above a rectifier tube like that. But anyway, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover these contacts with a little bit of glue just in case that pops off someday. I don't want it bouncing around and hitting electrical contacts. And then I'll button it up and it'll be done. All right. She works. Anyway, this is a little more of a challenging set, but I kind of dig the more challenging sets. A little more working components. Seems to be keeping pretty good time. I say pretty good, it's been on for about 10 minutes and it hasn't lost a minute yet. But anyway, I'm going to let it play here for a few hours like all my other vintage electronics that have been restored get undertaken, because we want the heat to make sure and tease out any problems that might be associated, especially with expansion and contraction in the PC board. I want to make sure there's not going to be a problem there. And that can happen when those tubes get hot and it turns into a little oven inside. Alright guys, I'm not sure when this episode is going to air. I have started a new job. I have different computer situations, and so I need to get something to make my edits. Right now it's going up into the Ethernet somewhere in outer space, and it'll come down to Earth eventually. Until next time that a piece of electronic thing comes across my workbench, see you guys next time. Adios.